Okay, so let's work on chapter 12 here. Okay. Floating rate debt. Okay. Floating rate debt is the most common method for lenders to protect themselves from losses that may result from. Well, what are they going to care about? They really would care if the interest rate went up, right? So it's going to be to protect themselves from increases in the market interest rate. If the market interest rate went down, they'd be happy. They would make money, right? Because um, the opposite of a floating rate that would be fixed debt. And so if I fixed it at 5% and the interest rate ended up at 3%, I'd be happy. If I fixed it at 5 and the interest rate ended up being 8%, now I'm grumpy. As a lender, I now have a loss, so I'd want to protect myself from the losses from the increase in the market interest rate. Investors need to review transactions. Investors need to review transactions involving debt for debt swaps carefully to ensure um, what? Well, the biggest thing would be is you'd want to make sure that there's an economic benefit to doing so. Otherwise, you could just be generating investment costs that some manager might be imposing just to get some private benefit. Um, so you'd really want to be focusing as an investor. If they're doing a debt for debt swap, you'd want to make sure that there's an economic benefit to doing so. Hawker Company. Hawker Company issuing $200,000 of 10-year bonds, 8% bonds to yield 10% on 20x1, pay interest annually. Sold at a discount of 24,578. And we want to know the amount of bond discount amortization for 20x2. Okay. This is a bit tough here. So 01, 01, 20 x1, 12, 31, 20 x1, 12, 31, 20 x2. So the bond's paying interest annually on December 31st. We need to have a starting value and then the values on the date that the interest is paid. Um, Bonds are sold at a discount. So on January 1st, 20x1, we would have a unamortized bond discount of 24,578. So that's going to be here. And I can take that off of the $200,000 value so that I can solve that my carrying value is 175,422. Simply the 200,000 minus the 24,578. Now, for these years, how much is my interest going to be? Well, that's going to be my 200,000 times 0.08. It's 16,000. So in each of these years, I'm going to have a cash interest expense going out on 12/31 each of these years. And we need to calculate the cash interest. We need to calculate one more column here. We need to calculate the effective interest. So the effective interest is going to be the market rate times our carrying value. So right here, right, so if that's this kind of column here for effective interest, for this right here, that's going to be the 175,422 times 10%. That's going to get me 17,542. That's going to be right here, 17,542. The difference between 16,000 and 17,542, that's going to be my amortization. So my amortization in 20x1 is going to be 1542, which is just 17,542 minus 16,000. And then in 1231x2, to get to there, we're going to now take this 24,578 and we're going to subtract 1542. So that we're at 23,036. The carrying value will go up from 175,422. It's going to go up by 1542. So now it's going to be 176,964. That's going to be important because that's going to give us our effective interest right here. 0.1 times 176,964. That's going to be 17696. And the difference between 17,696 and 16,000 is 1696. Take that 1696 and add it to the 176,964. That gets us our 178,660. And subtracting out that amortization gets us 21,340. Okay, so now I solved a lot more than I needed to here. So here I was solving for cash interest. I was solving for the unamortized bond discount value, the carrying value, how much in effective interest I was paying, and how much amortization I had. Well, the amount of amortization is now easy at this point to solve for. It is 1696. Found that right here, but that is how we found it. Okay. Which of the following is not an accurate description of the controversies? Um, Sorry, I'm just reading this to solve this. I think it's the first one here. It's not really accurate to say that you're going to be more accurate or transparent if the company is in financial distress versus if it's not. I don't think that would really have any role here. Let's just read the others here. Critics argue that opportunities are enhanced for companies that manipulate their earnings. Well, yeah, that's why they do it, right? They manipulate their earnings and balance sheets so that they get an opportunity that they otherwise shouldn't have had. Advocates argue that accounting induced volatility is eliminated. Yeah, that's the reason why you do it. You reduce the volatility that comes from recognizing expense when you shouldn't. Critics argue that companies can use the fair value option in situations where there's not necessarily a relationship between the financial asset and liability in order to promote the opportunity to manage earnings. Yeah, that's true as well. So a non-accurate description would be is that if the company's in financial distress, that the financial reporting is more accurate. That just wouldn't be the case. Which of the following is not an accurate statement regarding the requirement of debt? Okay, so when debt is retired before the maturity date, a loss occurs if market rate increased some bond. Um, that is not true. The gain or loss is categorized in the income statement. The gain when debt is retired before the maturity date, when debt is retired on the maturity date. Yeah, so the only one here that doesn't work out here would be if I retire it before the maturity date. Because if I retire it before the maturity date, um, and then you get a gain from the retirement of that debt, um, if the market rate of interest did increase, um, we wouldn't have a gain, we would have a loss. So um, that's why this is not true. You see that loss right here. When it's retired, it's equal to the market value. Yes, that is the way it is by definition. And the gain or loss is on the income statement. That's also true. So yeah, this one is if you did retire before the maturity date and the market rate, interest rate increased, you would have a loss rather than a gain. Okay. Bond with a $750,000 maturity is immediately retired at 745. Okay, so we got some stuff to solve here. Okay, so let's take our $750,000 maturity value, and we are going to subtract discount. It's going to go 724.50, 500. And if it's immediately retired at 745,000, so that's the amount that's actually paid out. The difference between those two, between 724,500 and 745, that's a difference of 20,500. And that comes from the fact that when I retired it and I got 724,500, but I had been recognizing it at but I had been recognizing it that at the discount date that there was a difference of 724,500. So what we got here is a difference between if the $750,000 bond is retired at 745, and then the bond discount brings it down by 25,500. So I got to take the 750 minus 25,500 to get 724,500. Now there's going to be a difference between the properly discounted bond at 724,500 and the immediately retired amount of 745,000. That difference of 20,500 is our loss when the debt was extinguished. Okay. Bond with a maturity value of $700,000 was initially issued for $715,000. Okay. 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 Got a maturity value here of 700,000. Initially issued for 715, 10% interest rate, maturing in 10 years. What's our total interest expense? So if we took 700,000, multiplied it by 0.1, and did that for 10 years, then we would have $700,000. That would be how much we'd be paying in cash interest. The bond premium is our difference between the 700 and 715, so we need to subtract that $15,000 premium. So that's going to get us 685. which fortunately is our answer right there. So I just took my total cash interest expense of 700,000 and subtracted the premium of 15,000, the difference between our bond maturity value and its original issue price. Okay. Now we've got bonds issued for Sharp Company. Okay. This one's a pretty hard one here. Determine the selling price of the bonds if the market interest rate was 10% and then if it was 6%. And these are for bonds that have a stated value of 8%. Okay, so to do this, we actually need a present value table. Okay, so let's get one. Okay. So this is after 10 years and a 10% interest rate. In our present value table, we're at 0.3855. So what that would mean I just don't want to forget that. Times the $500,000 value. Plus how much my interest payment's going to be, which would be 500,000 times 0.08. So that's 40,000. And we need to multiply this by its present value factor. To do that, we're going to need to add up all of these. Sorry, I'm trying to draw this carefully there. We're going to need to add those all up. Okay, so give me a second here. Okay. So the summation of all that would be 6.14457 if I did it correctly. 6.14457. Okay. 457. Oh, yo, sorry about that. Oof. Okay. So we need to add those two up. Okay, I get 438,553. Okay, so essentially here, what I had to do is I have to multiply my cash interest payments that I'm receiving, um, and I need to multiply that by the total of the present values. And I'm going to add to that the present value of the principal, which presumably would be repaid by the end. So that would be the entire $500,000 principal, which would be paid back by year 10. And then the present value in year 10, which is the 0.3855. So that gets us 438,553. When we sum up the two of these. Now, it's asking you now to do it for 6%. So the only things that are going to change here would be that at 6%, it's times 0.5584. So right there. So now it would be your $500,000 bond times that amount, plus your $40,000 in interest payments, and then you're going to need to sum up all these. I'm not going to do that for you, but you're going to sum up all these. Again, just type in present value table, and you'll get something on the web, or it might even be printed somewhere in the book. So I'm not going to, I'll let you do that work for fun. You're like, damn it, Shiding, why didn't you solve it for us? Okay, what is debentures? Okay, so this would just be definitional. Basically, a debenture, that would be any bond that basically um, isn't secured in any way. They do pay periodic interest. They do have a maturity date, and they can be converted to stock. So this is just be our definitional that it is unsecured. Okay. Abs Company. There we go. When I looked at this one, I'm not going to be grading this question, so you do not need to do this question. I've already made the exam now at this point, and this question is not on the exam, nor is any of the other material related to it on the exam. So this is not a question that you need to do. I just don't want you to waste your time solving this. I solved it, and it ended up being even more difficult than um, I anticipated it should have been. So don't worry about this one. That's an easy one then, huh? I wish they were all like that. That company. There we go. Okay. So we've got interest here pegged at um, LIBOR plus 3. So, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I didn't mean to select that, so don't think that that's the answer. Okay, so 7 plus 3, so that's 10. And we're going to multiply that by our 200,000. 0.07 plus 0.03 equals 0.1 times 200,000 is 20,000. There we go. Should be pretty easy. Which of the following is not a description of floating rate debt? Um, Floating rate debt may benefit a company if market rates fall. Yes, that is true. Floating rate debt can protect the investor if market rates increase. That is true. Market rate debt is used to lower the company's overall borrowing cost. That is true as well. It actually smooths out any of the volatility. Accounting entries are more complex due to risk sharing characteristics of the floating rate debt. That is not true. They're not more complex, they're actually more transparent. And you're not really doing any risk sharing when you've got floating rate debt. In fact, all the risk has actually been shifted to the um, borrower. So you're not really sharing the risk anymore. In fact, you've offloaded your risk. We already looked at this one. The common types of bonds that are unsecured. These would be our debenture bonds. There's nothing really more to say for this. So we've already kind of talked about this. And then secured bonds, what are those? So for secured bonds, these would be debts that are collateralized, right? Just like so for instance, a house is the collateral when you borrow money as a mortgage. Using the effective interest method, amortization of a discount or premium behaves in what way um, over the life of the bond? Okay. So, um, using the effective interest rate method, uh, yeah, it's actually the very first one. Okay, so it would actually be for both the increase for the premium bond and the increase for the discounted bond. So remember, under our effective interest rate method here, what we're essentially doing is looking at that value um, when it's changing over time, and specifically looking at the amortized cost method. What we see is that amortization increases over time for the premium bond, as well as for the discounted bond, because that amortization just keeps adding up. We saw that when we solved um, the earlier question, when we were solving it for um, which one was that? When we were solving that for, sorry, I'll look it up there. When we were solving it for the Hawker Company one, the one where the $200,000 bond, we add up that amortization to get us our unamortized bond discount and add that up over time. Okay. Next company. Yeah, this is another one that I solved it and I realized pretty quickly this is a lot more difficult than I wanted it to be. Um, as long as you're comfortable with calculating or looking up the present value factors and using that to find the present value over the course of different years, in this case over 5 years, I'll be okay with that, and you should be fine for the exam. You're not going to see a question like this though. But this is just giving us our present value factors for each of those numbers over time. And again, we solved something like this for the Hawker Company. So if you want to look back again at that problem, that'll be okay for you for the exam. So again, you don't need to do this one either. I don't want to waste your time solving things that you're never going to see again. In this case, you won't see something like this on the exam. Which of the following is not correct regarding amortization when using the effective interest method? Okay. So amortization of discount, that is true. So that is not correct one. Amortization of premium on bonds, that is true. Amortization of both premium on bonds payable and discount on bonds payable decrease. That is not true, right? So it's the decrease part right here that's not true, because that would actually be an increase. Amortization increases in later years. That's true. So yes, so this letter C here is the not true part, and that's largely because, again, of the discount on bonds payable. The bond discount would be increasing in later years. Which of the following statements is correct? Um, we've already seen this so many times here. Um, it's going to increase the carrying value. Again, we saw this in Hawker Company problem. That is a very important question. So I keep coming back to it. This is the correct one. Uh, and again, if you redo that Hawker Company question, uh, this will seem even a little bit more clear. Which of the following statements for floating rate debt is incorrect? Um, if the market rate decreases, investors benefit. That is true. So this first one is true. If the market rate decreases, both the issuing company and investors benefit. Well, that's not true. So they can't both um, benefit. The whole point of floating rate debt is that um, the risk it's either going to be above it or below it, and when it's above it or below it, the one party, either the lender or the borrower, is going to bear the expense entirely, the investing expense entirely. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Salt Corporation. Okay. Issuing bonds with face amount of $10 million, stated interest rate of 8%. Market interest rate is 6%. Bond issue costs are $200,000. What should that bond issue cost be recognized as? Well, this is all part of how debt instruments are structured, so that's going to be a reduction in the premium. Um, so that $200,000 is just going to reduce the value of our premium. So this right here. And that's large. This is largely definitional. Theta Company. Has prepared to sell bonds with a stated interest rate of 6, market rate of 8. Then the bonds will sell in the market at what? Well, it's going to sell at a discount, and that's because the market rate is higher than the stated rate. So that's just going to give us our discount. And that's just our definition of um, the discount. And then finally, 20x1 effective interest rate 14%, issued bonds with maturity value of $1 million, the rate of interest is 12%, interest paid semi-annually, and sold for $893. Okay, so what we're going to need to do here is calculate the interest expense, um, take out the cash payment, and that's going to get us our discount amortization. So what's our interest expense? Our interest expense is the 893 640 times the 14% interest rate. That's gonna get paid semi-annually, so times 1/2 or 6/12. That's 62,555. Okay, and then our cash payment. This one's easy. That's going to be our $1 million maturity value times the stated rate of interest on the bond, which is 12%, times 1/2 because it's paid semi-annually. And that's $60,000. The difference between these two is 225,555. And that is, in fact, what our answer is here. So I just took the difference between my interest expense and I subtracted from that my cash payment amount to get my discount amortization as a result, which is what I solved for here. Okay.